As you all are aware, the cabinet is in Tobago, and we are going to have our weekly cabinet meeting this week in Tobago from about 10 o'clock this morning. I wanted the opportunity before going into cabinet to address the members of the public with respect to just one issue. And that issue is the flooding that we're currently experiencing in some of the southern areas of Trinidad. First thing I'd like you all to know is that the Met Office at 8 o'clock this morning updated its warning. We're now at an adverse weather alert number 3, and it is at yellow level, which basically means that periods of rainfall with the low chance of thunderstorm activity are likely, mainly over Trinidad. Street and flash flooding, gusty winds, landslides, landslips are possible. Near heavy showers and thunderstorms. This activity is associated with the ITCZ, and conditions are expected to gradually improve. Public of Trinidad and Tobago, over the last 24 to 48 hours, we have been experiencing some ITCZ weather patterns that have dumped large amounts of rainfall in the southern parts of Trinidad and Tobago. So some parts of Trinidad and Tobago, in particular in the southern areas, Pinal, Debe, Oropouche, Faizabad, have been affected by floodwaters. What has been happening is the first responders, the various disaster management units of the regional corporations, have been dealing with any incidents and needs for assistance during the last 24 hours. The ODPM is in constant contact. I personally am updated by all of the DMUs, the disaster management units of the various regional corporations. The national security apparatus is on standby. We are sending out the engineers battalion out into southern Trinidad and in particular areas of Barapo and Debe to do first-hand on-the-ground assessments. At this stage, there's also some flooding that has taken place in the St. Helena area just behind the airport, to the south of the airport, Williamsville, Kelly Village, and also I was just told Las Lomas, the rising waters, etc. As you all are aware by now, some of this flooding is attributable to the high water levels, and in particular whether we're in a high tide or a low tide, and we've been experiencing some higher tides than usual. At this stage, fortunately, the first responders have been able to contain their efforts and to be able to respond efficiently and effectively. So those are the regional corporations. ODPM stands by ready to deploy any necessary and additional resources if and as when needed. But the point that we want to make is that we continue to monitor, we continue to be aware. I'd like to also thank the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, who have been providing information from the ground back into our units for information purposes, so we know what is taking place, and also for generally assisting where they can. So at this stage, we continue to be able to effectively deal with the isolated incidents. There's a lot of road flooding in these areas. There are some impassable roads. During the course of the day, the various regional corporations, ODPM, and other bodies with responsibility, including the police service, Ministry of Works and Transport, will be putting out information as it becomes available as to what roads should be avoided, etc. We are able at this stage to contain it to the regional corporations, but the point is that the central government and the other arms of national security are on standby should there be a need for further and additional resources to be put in place for assistance. There were a number of isolated incidents during the course of the last 24 hours due to some landslips. We've had some roads give way. There was some loss of a couple houses. I saw reports of potential loss of houses in Cedrus, but in Sandy Grande and some other areas. There have been a couple of isolated incidents that may not be attributable to the floodwaters, but we've had to send in rescue crews where there's been a person who had a stroke, another one who had a heart attack, etc. And because of the floodwaters surrounding their homes, we had to use rescue crews to get to them. What I can tell Trinidad and Tobago, coming out of the catastrophic flooding a few weeks ago at national security, even whilst we were in the midst of dealing and responding with those catastrophic floods, I had instructed that a post-mortem be done, that we sit down and we analyze where there were strengths, where there were, more importantly, where we had weaknesses, where we needed additional resources. And that has taken place. And all of the various arms, the ODPM, the Defence Force, and the other arms were asked to prepare reports for me that we would then be discussing. And that process has begun, and they've reached in a very advanced state with it. So we are not sitting by idly and waiting for the next one. We intend to improve our response. We've also procured and commenced the process of procuring additional resources, for example, additional flat-bottom boats and these types of things that will then be provided strategically throughout Trinidad and Tobago. What I intend to do once at a national security level, we've completed that assessment and that post-mortem, I intend to meet with Ministry of Works and Transport, local government, all of the disaster management units, and other first responders, Ministry of Health, and all of the other arms that will play a role if we in Trinidad and Tobago face any unnatural disaster taking place, because this is something that is of concern to me at the Ministry of National Security, and it is something I discuss on a weekly basis at my heads of security meeting, that we need to be in a state of preparedness. With these matters, as you know, you can't predict them. You can't predict when is the next earthquake. Yes, we can predict and we can be notified in advance of rainfalls and heavier rainfalls and these types of matters. And we find ourselves in better states of preparedness when dealing with these incidents. Somebody had asked me on the media this morning whether it is that we have to, why are we reactive instead of being proactive? The truth is, with a lot of these natural disasters and unman-made incidents, you will be in a reactive mode, and national security will be in a reactive mode, because we are called upon to assist after the incidents have taken place. To see what preventative actions and measures can take place. However, Trinidad and Tobago, I think this is a proper point to put down a marker that what we're experiencing, in my humble opinion, and I'm not a scientist, are the effects of global warming, and climate change is taking place despite what anyone may want to tell us. We are seeing these incidents of unnatural flooding taking place across Europe. You saw it recently in Italy, where there actually was loss of life. It's also taking place. I saw the Kuwaiti airport completely underwater 2 days ago. You all know, when we were in the middle of our catastrophic flooding, Qatar in one day had a whole annual rainfall dumped on them in one day. So this is not a phenomenon that is limited to Trinidad and Tobago alone. It is something we're going to be facing going forward. The government is not sitting idly by. We are putting plans and preparations in place to be able to respond better. But we all need to be aware of it, and these things need to be factored and taken into account. At this stage, I'll take a few questions. I can confirm that we will have a post-cabinet press conference after cabinet later on today, where we will, of course, open up after discussing whatever the topics that we intend to discuss there are, which would be a broader range. We'll open up for questions as is usual. So I'll just take any questions you all may have at this stage with respect to the flooding that I've just described. Yes. The club.
Hello, just have one question, Minister. With respect to TV6 News last evening, there was a story with respect to one area in Trinidad where a number of debris was still in the rivers at this time. Is your government and your ministry looking towards cleanup in terms of ensuring that this does not reoccur?
I didn't see the particular news report, but what I can tell you, and I saw some reports of it on social media, and there was persons, I believe, standing on a bridge and the water level had risen and you were seeing bamboo and plastic bottles, etc. Cleaning takes place on a continuous basis, and what you would see in an incident like that is, because the water level has risen, the debris could not pass underneath the bridge, and it's creating a huge backstop. And you would have seen that a lot of that debris was because of us, men and women, of course, and those who are dumping things into the water courses. There was a lot of bamboo, but a lot of plastic bottles. So the government does have a campaign to make persons more aware and to try and get persons to litter less. But let the people of Trinidad and Tobago see, because I saw on top of that a massive container as well. And these types of things, when they find their way into the watercourse, are going to block up the watercourses. But what I'd like to emphasize at this stage is the keeping clear of watercourses is something that is continuous, and as Ministry of Works and Transport, the Drainage Division, as well as local government and other areas in central governments, we are aware of it. But persons need to stop littering. But the additional point, Ms. Williams, is that what we're experiencing now are the effects of climate change. So you're seeing a lot more water being dumped in rainfall over a short period of time, and the rivers and the watercourses may not be able to handle that level of water, but it drains off. When you have that combined with a higher than normal high tide, like during the catastrophic flooding, what we were experiencing is spring tide, so the tide was actually a lot higher than it usually is. The water flowing out of these river courses, these drains, when they literally hit the high tide, where the mouth of the river meets the sea, they can't push into the sea because the sea level is higher.
Just one other question I have for you, Minister. With respect to all litter laws, do you think that more stringent laws should be in place to treat with this?
The laws are there. In fact, you would recall that in the last budget we just passed, at the month of October, we increased the fines, the litter law fines. So it comes down now to the enforcement. But even with the enforcement of laws, it is really the attitude of our people. And I'm still seeing it. I see it when I'm driving on the road, when I'm walking on the road, that persons are still indiscriminately littering. They will drop their bottle, they'll throw out a box of fast food and these types of things. Those are the types of, that type of behavior needs to change.
Morning, Minister. Karen.
Morning, Karen.
Philip, TTT News. I know a lot of the resources would have been focused in east and central Trinidad after the recent floods, but now the flooding is occurring in South Trinidad. Can you say what type of work was done, or if any, within the last few weeks in South Trinidad?
Again, this is not work that needs to be done within the last few weeks. We had heard the Minister of Works and Transport say that great resources were put in trying to do exactly as Ms. Williams suggested, the clearing of the drains and the water courses, and that did take place all across Trinidad. Things now are being driven not only national security by intelligence, but hopefully in the whole of government. So we are aware the flooding that we're seeing take place now in Barapo, in Oropoon, in Debe, Pinal, unfortunately, that is becoming more and more usual. So in the clearing, when you're dedicating resources, you would dedicate resources in the areas where you know there's a higher likelihood of flooding taking place, so that would have been done. Quite frankly, what we're experiencing there is a huge amount of rainfall in a short period of time. They are in very low-lying areas. I saw that firsthand during the disaster flooding when I made my way down to South Trinidad with bated breath to see whether they were experiencing flooding, and I'm happy at that stage in October they did not have the type of flooding that they're now experiencing.
Okay, and following up on Liz's question, what about the beverage container bill? Does the government have plans on when that bill will be laid in Parliament and in legislation?
We have had discussion about the bill, not the specifics of the bill in front of us, but we have had discussion exactly as you all are suggesting there, that look, what additional can be done, because we recognize, and not only in Trinidad, I mean, you all have seen in certain parts of the Pacific Ocean, these huge mounds of plastic containers. Is unreal. It's like an island of just plastic containers that have gathered together. So it is something the government is aware of. You all would be aware recently we took a decision with styrofoam containers that we're ruling out, and we're banning styrofoam containers. We've increased the importation, and we intend to look at, I know the Ministry of Public Utilities is looking at that bottle bill, as we call it, and we are pushing that whatever we can do from a legislative point of view to assist in the current global and climate change, we will do it. All right? Thank you all very much, and I'm sure I'll see many of you later when we have the post-cabinet press conference. Thank you all.